/donate.
والسلام على من لا نبي بعده على من لا نبي بعده ولا أمة بعد أمته ولا كتاب بعد كتابه ولا شريعة بعد شريعته أما بعد فأعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم إنما يخشى الله من عباده العلماء صدق الله العظيم. My dear respected elders and brothers, from time to time, as we are aware, together with relevant topics, we also speak on events and personalities of the past. And the intention is to be inspired by their lives, to be able to put it into practice. That is the reason why we speak about events of the past, not to have memories of the glory without putting it into practice, because that would be meaningless. It would have no meaning. The only reason we do so is that we benefit from the past and we speak about them so that we can put it into practice. Someone has very beautifully said that you cannot plan for the future but in the present. You cannot plan for the future but in the present. And you cannot benefit from the present but by looking at the past. You cannot plan for the future but now. You can't plan for the future in the future, then it would be a failure. And you cannot plan in the present but by looking at the past. Therefore Allah Ta'ala says, لَقَدْ كَانَ فِي قَصَصِهِمْ إِبْرَةٌ لِأُولِي الْأَلْبَابِ. Verily, in the incidents that we make mention of in the Quran, there are lessons for people who have intelligence. Now, the person that I would like to speak about today, although previously whenever we have spoken, we have by and large spoken about the Anbiya alayhi salatu wassalam, our beloved Nabi Kareem sallallahu alayhi wasallam, and the Sahaba Ikram Ridwanullahi ta'ala anhum ajma'in. And no doubt they are the beacons of Hidayat, they are the greatest people whom we can draw inspiration from. However, today I would like to speak about a tabi'i. And very seldom we have done so. That someone who was after the time of the Sahaba. And perhaps there are very few people outside the Sahaba who have had such an impact upon human morality, upon human values, upon a ruler the way there was like this person. The person whom I am referring to, Umar bin Abdul Aziz rahmatullah alayh. Umar bin Abdul Aziz rahmatullah alayh was a tremendous and a unique person. He was born in the 61st year after Hijri, making it just about 50 years after the death of our beloved Nabi Kareem sallallahu alayhi wasallam. His father was a person who was in Egypt. He was the viceroy or the governor of one of the Umayyad Khalifas in Egypt. His mother was Asim, and she was the granddaughter of the first Umar. Umar bin Abdul Aziz rahmatullah alayhi is known as Umar II. His mother was the granddaughter of the first Umar ibn Khattab radiyallahu ta'ala anhu. And there's a very interesting incident which relates to his lineage. And I think we made mention of this incident. Umar ibn Khattab radiyallahu ta'ala anhu, one day while going out to look at the state of the welfare of his citizens, overheard a conversation. The conversation was like the mother telling the daughter, add water to the milk, it will increase the volume of the milk, we will have more milk to sell, more profit to be made. The daughter said, how can we do so? We will be deceiving people. We would be selling milk that is diluted with water and people won't make out the difference. And don't you know, Umar the Khalifa has prohibited that people must deceive customers. So the mother said, why are you worried about Umar? Umar is not here to see us. So the daughter said, never mind Umar, the Lord of Umar is here to see us. Even if Umar is not here, Umar's Lord and Umar's Allah is here to see us. Umar overheard this conversation. He was so impressed by the piety and intelligence of this daughter that the next day he sent a proposal for this daughter for his son's marriage. His son was Asim radiyallahu ta'ala anhu. Now it's from such parents that you have such great lineage. You see, when the parents are pious, then it impacts positively upon the children. Now that is why he proposed to this woman, and from this particular lineage and from this marriage and union, came Umar bin Abdul Aziz rahimahullah. And that is why it is said in one hadith, Nabi Kareem sallallahu alaihi wasallam had said, O people, when you are obedient to me, raditu, I become happy. Allah Ta'ala says, and when I become happy by your obedience, the effect of my happiness lasts for 7 generations. That if you are obedient, then the effect of your obedience will last for 7 generations. And when you are disobedient, the impact of that particular disobedience also lasts for 7 generations. That when you are obedient, there is barakah in your next 7 generations. And when you are disobedient, the barakah that would have come upon your children, if you would have been obedient, they would lose out upon that, and there will be no barakah in your next 7 generations. So from this union came Umar bin Abdul Aziz rahmatullah alayh. Umar Abdul Aziz rahmatullah alayh's father passed away at the age of 20. And thereafter his uncle Abdul Malik bin Marwan, who was the Khalifa of the time, he called him and he told him to get married to his daughter, Fatima. So Fatima was his cousin, and it was also the daughter of the Khalifa of the time, the Khalifa bin Abdul Malik bin Marwan. Now after he got married, after a few years, Abdul Malik bin Marwan passed away. And his son Walid became the Khalifa. Keep in mind that was a time of the Umayyads where kingship and rulership was hereditary, the monarchy system, where after the father died, the son became the king, and after he died, then his son became the king. So in this particular way, Abdul Malik bin Marwan died, his son Walid became the Khalifa. After Walid, his son Suleiman became the Khalifa. When Suleiman became ill, Suleiman realized that he did not have any young children. He did not have any grown-up children. So he even lamented the fact on his deathbed, fortunate are those who have grown-up children when they die. Fortunate are those who have grown-up children when they died. So not knowing who to appoint as a Khalifa, various ashab and companions, they told him that why don't you appoint your brother-in-law? Why don't you appoint your brother-in-law, your sister's husband, Umar bin Abdul Aziz? And especially there was one person by the name of Hawa bin Raj'i, who he was the one who told Suleiman bin Abdul Malik that why don't you become the one who will appoint someone, and inshallah he will bring khair and he will become good. His name was Raja bin Haywa. Why don't you appoint him? So Suleiman appointed Umar bin Abdul Aziz rahmatullah as a Khalifa. Now just before he became the Khalifa, let me make mention, in the time of Walid, he was appointed as the governor of Medina. So before his appointment as a Khalifa, he was the governor of Medina for some time. Now there are 2 reports about Umar bin Abdul Aziz rahmatullah alayhi's life before assuming Khilafat. There are 2 reports which speaks about how he was before he was a Khalifa, when he was the governor of Medina. One report suggests that he was also given to extravagant ways. He was also extravagant. He was also given to the luxurious way of life, which was the forte of the ruling class of the time. And the remarkable change that came upon him after Khilafat. Like for example, it is said that when he was made the governor of Medina, he came to Medina with luggage that was put on 30 camels. Talk about overweight when you go and travel nowadays in airplanes. He said that he had 30 camels that brought his luggage to Medina Sharif. He had a tailor. The tailor says that before assuming Khilafat, I used to make a kurta of Umar bin Abdul Aziz, the cloth of which used to be 400 dirhams. 400 silver coins to make one kurta. And even with 400 dirhams, that one kurta, he used to say that it is not fine enough. It is not good enough. Get me a better kurta. Get me a better cloth. He said after he became the Khalifa, then I used to make him a kurta with cloth that used to count and used to cost 14 dirhams. Where is 400 dirhams and where is 14 dirhams? And that 14 dirhams he used to say, it is too extravagant. After he became the Khalifa. Now just keep this in mind as we go along. It is also made mention that, he had this particular situation, and one incident that had a very great impact upon Umar bin Abdul Aziz was Hubayb bin Abdullah bin Zubair, the son of a very, very prominent Khalifa, very prominent Sahabi. When he was making the extension, they were making the extension of the Masjid al-Nabawi. So Hubayb came to him and said, "Oh Umar, don't touch the private quarters of Nabi Karim Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. The house where Nabi Karim Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam lived, don't touch that in the extension." So because he criticized Walid and the Khalifa of the time, Walid told his governor in Medina, Umar bin Abdul Aziz, punish Hubayb. So what he punished Hubayb with 40 lashes, and he doused him in cold water in winter. And Hubayb passed away because of that particular punishment. And Umar bin Abdul Aziz, rahmatullahi alayhi, later on in his life, he used to cry tears. And he says, who's going to help me against Hubayb on the day of Qiyamah? That I unjustly punished him, which led to his death. Who is going to answer on my behalf against Hubayb on the day of Qiyamah? So this was as he was a governor. There is another report that also suggests that while he was given to these extravagant ways, there is no doubt that he was also endowed with unique character and piety. Of specific mention, of specific reference is made that he was very close to the ulama of the time. Like for example, Anas bin Malik radiallahu anhu, the famous Sahabi, came to Medina when he was the governor and he led Salat. And Anas bin Malik said, I never saw anyone's namaz in the time that we are living in that resembled the namaz of Nabi Karim Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, resembled the salat of Nabi Karim Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, the way Umar bin Abdul Aziz rahmatullahi alayhi's salat resembles that of our beloved Nabi Karim Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. Maulana Abul Hasan Nadwi rahimahullah, however, writes a very amazing thing. He said, except for his integrity, his character, there was nothing to suggest in his life that he was destined to become a remarkable human being, the first reviver in the Islamic history. There was nothing to suggest that in his life. But you see, there's an amazing aspect that we always got to keep in mind. Many a times the potential of a person needs a moment of truth to bloom. Many a times the potential of a person needs a moment of truth to bloom. And keep in mind, responsibility and authority. Now, each and every one, we have some sort of responsibility and authority. Sometimes we are parents, sometimes we are bosses, sometimes we are employers. Responsibility and authority, brothers, can bring out the best and the worst in a human being. Responsibility and authority sometimes brings out the best, sometimes it brings out the worst in a human being. Therefore, we should always be careful with responsibility and authority. That, oh Allah, make it be good for me. So responsibility and authority can bring out the best in human beings, and it can bring out the worst in human beings. In the place of Umar bin Abdul Aziz, it brought out the best in him. Subhanallah, how he brought out the best in him. It is amazing. Now they say power corrupts. Let me become a little bit of a philosopher today. They say power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. But wallah, my dear respect brothers, just as power corrupts, weakness also corrupts. That is why in our hadith, when Nabi Karim Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam warned people about wealth, he also warned people about poverty. He said, I don't fear poverty as much as I fear wealth for this ummah. Because wealth will become freely available for this ummah, and they will be destroyed the way the people of the previous ummahs were destroyed when they had excessive wealth. Then he also said, كَادَ الْفَقْرُ أَن يَكُونَ كُفْرًا. That many a times he said poverty leads to kufr. Now today much of our Much of our fitna in today's time, jealousy, pettiness, lack of tolerance, disagreements, arguments, wallahi lazim, it is because of our weakness. When the Muslim ummah was strong, it had tolerance. When the Muslim ummah is weak, it has got no tolerance. And this is something that you can bear out from the history of Islam. Nevertheless, Umar bin Abdul Aziz rahmatullah alayhi becomes the Khalifa. When he is chosen, the people bring him upon the pulpit forcibly, reluctantly. He wasn't prepared to come. They put him upon their shoulders and they bring him upon the mimbar. He speaks to the people and said, "Oh people, I have come here without my permission, without me wanting it. I don't want to become the Khalifa. You take it away from you. One of you become the Khalifa." They all insist that you must become the Khalifa. Raja bin Haywa, the one who proposed his name, said, "I was reluctant that while I have proposed his name, will he become a good Khalifa?" He said, "My fears were put to rest when the first letter he wrote to the provincial governors. He wrote to them, anyone who is unjust, I'm going to remove him." This is remarkable. This perhaps, despite its shortness, he was only a Khalifa for 2 years and 5 months. It's hard to imagine the impact of his rule in Islamic history. Umar's rule became the yardstick against which all future rulers were to be measured. And unfortunately, we got to say all of them failed against that particular yardstick. Amongst the things that were remarkable, the first thing he did, all governors who were unjust, he removed them. The second thing he did, he told his wife Fatima. Now his wife Fatima was also a very amazing woman. I heard from Maulana Ubaidullah Sahib rahmatullah alayh, that he said in our history, there is only one woman, in Islamic history, there is only one woman whose husband was a ruler, Umar bin Abdul Aziz, her father was a ruler, and her 4 brothers were rulers. This was Fatima. He said in our history, there is only one woman, husband ruler, father ruler, 4 brothers rulers. Right? She said that when he became the Khalifa, he told her, all this jewelry and valuables you got, your father and brothers might have been given you when they were Khalifas. But it came from the Baytul Mal. Either you return it, or either you go out of my nikah. She said, no, I will return it. So she returned everything back to the Baytul Mal. It is said that such was his simplicity. Mu'abul Hasan Nadwi rahimahullah said his simplicity was something that even monks could not achieve. Even monks could not achieve, never mind the rulers of the time. Such was his simplicity that he did not allow any luxury even in his own house while he was a Khalifa. One day he noticed his daughters, while eating, they were covering their mouths. So he said, "Oh my daughters, why are you covering your mouths?" They said, "Today, there was nothing but onions in the house, and therefore we ate onions, and it's emitting a particular type of foul smell." So he said, "Oh my daughters, I could also have given you a sumptuous meal, but I don't want Jahannam for myself. I don't want, by giving you an extravagant way of life and taking advantage of my khilafat, give you extravagance, and thereafter I will be consigned to Jahannam." The woman of the time understood that. Imam Ghazali rahmatullah alayhi used to say that the woman of that time, in the pious era, when they used to send their husbands to work, they used to say that, listen, bring risk, but don't bring haram. Bring risk, don't bring haram into our house. We can bear hunger, we can't bear the fire of Jahannam. Bring risk, but bring halal risk. If you don't get halal risk, don't bring it. We can bear hunger, but we can't bear haram. And when we eat haram, it brings the fire of Jahannam. Is there such households like that in today's time? Anyway, I'm going to make mention, and time has already elapsed. Maybe we might have to leave, especially some of the reformation of Umar. Umar bin Abdul Aziz rahmatullah alayhi was the first person who compiled the ahadith of Nabi Karim sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He was the first reviver in Islam. Many things with regard to his khilafat, inshallah we will make mention. But I think together with his khilafat, let me just end off with one incident of his piety, his fear of Allah. 2 weeks ago, we spoke about the love of Allah. And no doubt, no whatsoever, that is also supposed to be in our life. That we are supposed to love Allah. But our love of Allah must always be balanced with the fear of Allah's greatness. Al-Imanu Bainal. Yazid bin Hawshab is one of the contemporaries of Umar bin Abdul Aziz. He used to say, Umar bin Abdul Aziz used to fear Allah so much, it seemed that Jannat and Jahannam was only created for him. He used to fear Jannat, he used to desire Jannat so much and fear Jahannam so much, it seemed that Jannat and Jahannam were only created for him. His wife Fatima says that sometimes during the night, Umar used to fear Allah and he used to twitch, and he used to twitch like a bird. He used to twitch in his bed like a bird out of the fear of Allah. And the family used to worry whether he will make it alive till the time of Fajr. That used to be his fear of Allah. So this was a remarkable human being, and these are some of aspects of his life that we have made mention of today. Inshallah, if Allah gives us the ability, in the future also we will speak about other aspects of his life. May Allah make us follow such great people in all aspects of their life and bring it into our life. Wa akhiru da'wana alhamdulillahi rabbil
alamin. /donate.
على من لا نبي بعده على من لا نبي بعده ولا أمة بعد أمته ولا كتاب بعد كتابه ولا شريعة بعد شريعته أما بعد فأعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم تلك الدار الآخرة نجعلها للذين لا يريدون علوا في الأرض ولا فسادا والعاقبة للمتقين صدق الله العظيم. My dear respected elders and brothers, last week in our bayan we spoke about the life of Hazrat Umar bin Abdul Aziz rahimahullah. We spoke about his earlier times. We spoke about how he is linked to Hazrat Umar radiyallahu ta'ala anhu, how that link came about. We also spoke about his earlier years when he was a governor of Medina Munawwara. Then we spoke about his ascension to Khilafat, how he was made the Khalifa. And we spoke about one or two incidents about his fear of Allah. Today I would like to carry on from there, however, always reiterating that one of the reasons why we speak about personalities of the past is not to reminisce, not to just to talk about it with the intention of taking pleasure of the glory of our past. In a certain way, that would not serve us much, because when we talk about great events and personalities of the past, we must do so with the intention of gaining lessons and putting into practice what we learn from great personalities of the past. Now continuing from where we said that Umar bin Abdul Aziz rahmatullah alayhi was made the Khalifa. And after he was made the Khalifa, there were many great aspects and benefits and reforms that Umar bin Abdul Aziz rahmatullah alayhi introduced. One of the very first things that he did was he confiscated property that was wrongfully taken from the Baytul Mal and returned it back to the Baytul Mal. This is one of the most important aspects of a person's life, to give back to its rightful owner what it is due. Abdullah ibn Mubarak rahmatullah alayhi has written, and he said that it is better to give 1 dirham back to its rightful owner than to give 600,000 dirhams in charity. Let me repeat that. It's better to give 1 dirham back to his rightful owner than to give 600,000 dirhams in charity. The greatest thing, दूसरे के हुकूक को वापस कर देना, ये सबसे बड़ी नेकी की बात है. More important than any other aspect. That is why the first thing Umar bin Abdul Aziz rahmatullah alayhi did, give back whatever was wrongfully taken from the Baytul Mal, he gave it back. Interesting thing has been made mention. He had just completed the burial of the previous Khalifa, Sulaiman bin Abdul Malik, who made him the Khalifa, who appointed him the Khalifa. And after completing the burial, he came into his room, his private quarters, and Umar Abdul Aziz rahmatullah alayhi was about to take a rest when his son came to knock at his door. And his son told him, "Oh my father, what do you intend doing about the things that have been wrongfully taken from the Baytul Mal?" So Umar bin Abdul Aziz rahmatullahi said, "I intend giving it back, but I want to take a rest now. And when I get up, I will do it." So the son said, "Oh my father, can you give me a guarantee that you will remain alive till after you take a rest to restore the property back to its rightful owners?" So the father got a shock. And he came to his son and he kissed him on his forehead and he said, "Jazakallah, oh my son, for helping me in my responsibility." Subhanallah, if only we can have the father-son relationship in such a way that, we talk about these type of things, helping one another in doing good. Today, what is our situation? Many a times we will talk about to our children about the soccer scores. This happened in this world, this happened in that world. Look at this beautiful example. The son telling the father, "Oh my father, can you give me guarantee that when you wake up, you will be alive to return back what has been wrongfully taken back to its rightful owners?" So the father immediately sat down to give back everything which was wrongfully taken back to the Baytul Mal. To the extent that he had a ring which was given to him by the previous Khalifa. He told his servant Mazahim, "Oh Mazahim, take this and give it back to the Baytul Mal." So his slave said, "If you're giving everything back, what are you leaving for yourself and your family?" So I said, "I'm leaving Allah for my family." And history bears testimony to this, brothers. Just look at this. When you do right, how Allah gives you barakah. History bears testimony to this fact that historians narrate, after 1 or 2 generations after Umar bin Abdul Aziz, a person walks out of the masjid. He walks out of the masjid and he sees the children of the former Khalifas who gave lot of wealth to their children. Those children were begging. And Umar bin Abdul Aziz rahmatullah alayhi's children, he did not give anything to his children from the Baytul Mal, coming out of the masjid and dishing out charity. Subhanallah, look at this. This is the barakah of when we do things correct. Nevertheless, many things he did together with that. Well, in his first things he did was, state officials were excluded from entering into business. People who were employed by the state, they could not enter into business. They were given commensurate and good remuneration. But they were not allowed to enter into business because obviously they will take advantage of their position. The way we are seeing in present day South Africa. Unpaid labor was made illegal. And that's also another aspect. You could not take work from anyone without paying him what was his due. Pasture lands and game reserve, which were reserved for the family of the officials of the state, were evenly distributed amongst the people of the land. He urged people to listen to the complaints of the people who had against public officials. And he even announced in Hajj, anyone comes with a right complaint, a justified complaint against state officials, he will be giving a reward of 100 to 300 dinars. If you come to a complaint that this person who was a state official did wrong, you will be given 100 to 300 dinars as a reward. One of the amazing things, which was a historical dictum, that you see in that time, the non-Muslims used to pay a tax known as jizya. Now what was the tax? The tax was, because of that tax, the Islamic State would look after the property and the life of the non-Muslims. They were not obliged to go into the army. So because of that tax, people, their life and property was safe. So many people accepted Islam when they saw the justice of Umar bin Abdul Aziz rahmatullah alayhi. Many people, the Berbers of North Africa, many other people, when they saw his justice, they accepted Islam. So the tax collector of Egypt wrote a letter to Umar bin Abdul Aziz. And he said, the tax revenue is coming less because all people are becoming Muslims. So there is no tax to gain. And therefore it's becoming a problem to do the budget. We don't have money to do the budget. So Umar bin Abdul Aziz rahmatullah alayhi wrote this remarkable thing. He said, Allah sent Nabi Kareem sallallahu alaihi wasallam as rahmatul lil alameen, not someone to collect tax. Allah sent the Prophet not to collect tax. Allah sent the Prophet to make rahmatul lil alameen. So he said, if everyone accepts Islam, because of which there is no tax, we will cultivate land, but we won't worry, because that is the reason for Nabi Kareem sallallahu alaihi wasallam's prophethood. Subhanallah, look at that vision Today, do we have that type of vision? Subhanallah, look, many a times people will say, I'm not generalizing, but they say, don't make your laborers Muslim. Eto nakamma pachi, musibat hai. We'll have to look after them. Look at that. Look at the way of thinking. And look at the way of thinking of Umar. He said, never mind if everyone comes and they no tax, we will go look after the land. We will cultivate the land. So this was the aspect with regard to it. One day his wife found him weeping after Salat and said, oh my husband, why are you weeping? He said, I'm thinking about the difficulty people are facing. I'm looking at those people, the poor that are starving. I'm looking at the people who don't have clothes. I'm looking at the prisoners who are strangers and who are in prison. I'm looking at the person who is old, who's got a big family, but can't look after his family. I'm worried I made the Khalifa. How I'm going to be able to fulfill their needs, and how will I be able to answer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on the day of Qiyamah with regard to this? He was so cautious with public funds. It is absolutely amazing. You see, one day someone wrote to him and said, I want candlesticks. That time, of course, there was lantern. There was no ESCOM, but ESCOM can learn a lot from this. Nevertheless, what he said, we have candlesticks. We want more candlesticks. So he wrote to this person who was his friend. He said, do you remember the time when we used to walk in the streets of Medina, you didn't have a candlestick, but you managed? Now, why are you insisting upon candlesticks? When people made a requisition to the Baytul Mal for pens and paper, he told the people, be cautious, write with a fine pen. Write with a fine pen. And when you use paper, write closely together that you don't waste paper. Brothers, today, what is our situation with israf and extravagance? Look at the wastage in our homes. Look at the wastage in our nikahs. The food is dumped. And look at what this particular example. He says, write with a fine pen so that the pen is fine, therefore it uses less paper. Write closely together so that you don't have to waste paper and pen and ink. Subhanallah, this is a situation with regard to it. And look at our situation in today's time. This is what we are supposed to learn. We are not only supposed to make mention of His greatness, we are supposed to bring this into our life. Kulu washrabu wala tusrifu. Allah says, eat and drink, but don't be extravagant. Yet the same Umar bin Abdul Aziz rahmatullah alayh spent a lot of money in the construction and the beautification of the Masjid al-Nabawi and the Amawi Masjid in Damascus. To such an extent that he brought imported wood in Masjid al-Nabawi. The Urdu, when they talk about it in Urdu, they say, sal ki lakri, which I assume would be teak wood. He used teak wood in Masjid al-Nabawi. And someone said, why are you using so much in beautifying the masjid? So he said, look at how the people are living today. Look at how the people are living. People are not living in simple. If they were living simple, I would make the masjid simple. But you are living in luxury and you want to make the masjid a dump. So he spent a lot of money on Masjid al-Nabawi and beautifying the Amawi Masjid in Damascus, which is a historical masjid. However, yet at the same time, he was cautious about unnecessary spending. Maybe we need to get that particular balance right. Never another beautiful aspect about him was regard to his humility. One day he was sitting with few friends when the fuel of the lantern went off. So then, when the fuel of the lantern got off, everyone got up and said, oh Khalifa, you remain, we will put up the fuel. He said, you don't know where the fuel is, leave it to me. He went there, he picked up the fuel, he put the fuel, he relit the lantern. And he said, when I got up, I was Umar bin Abdul Aziz. When I returned, I was Umar bin Abdul Aziz. What difference did I make when I had to refuel the lantern? In Gujarati, they say, there's a saying in Gujarati, if you're going to do something, are you going to become, a son of a small parents? If you're going to do something like this, which you think below your dignity? So what did he do? He went to go and refuel the lantern and he said, when I got up, I was Umar bin Abdul Aziz. When I returned, I was Umar bin Abdul Aziz. Subhanallah, look at that humility. Yet at the same time, he was extremely worried about the moral reformation about his people. Today, by and large, what do the leaders say about morality? They say morality is a private issue which cannot be legislated by the state. That's why they say abortion must be an individual incident. It must be an individual decision. Morality, they regard it to be something that cannot be legislated by the state. But Umar bin Abdul Aziz rahmatullah alayh took a special interest in the reformation and the moral and spiritual reformation of the people. He wrote to people about the importance of salat, saying if you have not performed your salat, then you can't practice upon any other aspect of deen. He spoke about, at that particular time, in the time of the Amawi Khilafat, the hammams became very popular. Hammams where the bathrooms were. And male and female used to come together in the hammams. And they used to be intermingling. Umar bin Abdul Aziz rahmatullahi put a stop to it. He said that if you have to do it with strict conditions. So one day he wrote a letter to the leader of the Muslim army which was stationed. It contains such beautiful words of advice that it is worthy of us reading and listening to it. He said, adopt taqwa. Taqwa is the best of provisions. He says, sin is more dangerous than the plots of the enemies. Brothers, listen to this, man. Today, you and I, this one has done this, America has done this, Russia has done this, the Illuminati has done this, and this one has done this. What did he say? Sin of the ummah is more dangerous than the plot of the enemies. He say we overcome our enemies due to their transgression. Due to their transgression and sin. They don't obey Allah, we obey Allah, therefore Allah grant us victory over them. He says they are more superior to us in resources. We cannot compete with them in resources. But if we are equal to them in sin, then they will get the upper hand over us. Just look at this wide words. If we can't compete with them with resources, but if we are going to do the same sin that they are doing, how will Allah's madad come upon us? Then obviously they will gain the upper hand over us. This is what is happening today. So look at this beautiful aspect with regard to and that is why Umar bin Abdul Aziz rahmatullah alayhi wrote to Abu Bakr ibn Hazm. He was the first person to compile the hadith of our beloved Nabi Kareem sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Not only did he write to Abu Bakr ibn Hazm to start the compilation of the sayings of Nabi Kareem sallallahu alaihi wasallam, but he also took an active interest because he was a scholar in his own right, and he also gave stipends to the muhaddithin who were given the task of compiling the sayings of Nabi Kareem sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Today when we read the hadith of Nabi Kareem sallallahu alaihi wasallam, we are greatly indebted to Umar bin Abdul Aziz rahmatullah alayhi, who put into place the process of compiling the hadith of our beloved Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Despite his piety, he had tolerance. Many a times people who have piety, sometimes they look down upon people. Much to their own detriment. Much to their own detriment. It was not so with Umar bin Abdul Aziz rahmatullah alayhi. Hazrat Mufti Taqi Usmani sahab, in his one book, Tarasha, he's written one incident. He said one day, there was a young person who was very anxious in his tahajjud prayers. So when he made tahajjud prayers, he made ishara to that everyone is sleeping and I'm making tahajjud. So his father overheard him saying that. So his father said, "Oh my son, it would have been better for you to sleep rather than making that comment. It would have been better for you to sleep rather than making that comment. That I'm making tahajjud, everyone is sleeping. No, what if you make tahajjud is for your own benefit." So the tolerance of, with regard to, he always exhorted people towards good, the non-Muslims, even people who were astray. He made Ghailan Damishki, he made him part of his administration, although he had objectionable views on certain issues. He made him part of his administration. And as long as Umar bin Abdul Aziz rahmatullah alayhi was alive, this Ghailan Damishki did not, propagate his unacceptable or objectionable views. Only after Umar bin Abdul Aziz rahmatullah alayhi passed away, he then continued making mention with regard to it, where he used to cast doubts on the aspect of takdir. But look at that tolerance. And that is the same tolerance which made people come towards Islam. And that is why it is said that he wrote, letters to 7 Rajas of India, inviting them towards Islam. He had so much concern with regard to non-Muslim subjects that one day in Hira, I think it was in Iraq, one Muslim killed a non-Muslim. And Umar bin Abdul Aziz took an active part and said, that person must be killed in retaliation. So he killed a Muslim in the law of retaliation because he killed a non-Muslim. That was in the time of when the Muslims were in power. Then he came to know that Abbas bin Walid, the son of the Khalifa Walid, had taken the wealth, usurped the wealth of a non-Muslim. He did not rest until he returned that wealth back to the non-Muslim. And this was his particular aspect with regard to his, remarkable aspect. And that is why it was his blessings of his khilafat. What was the blessings? When a person ruled with justice, then you find this particular type of thing that comes in with regard to the blessings. It is said that Abdul Hamid bin Abdul Rahman was a collector of zakat in Iraq. So he wrote to Umar bin Abdul Aziz, he said, "I've got a lot of zakat, what must I do?" He said, "Give it to the poor." He wrote back, "I gave it to the poor, zakat is still overflowing, what must I do?" He said, "Give it to those people who have loans, that they must repay their loans." He gave it to them. He wrote back. He said, everyone who had loans, I gave it to them. No one got loans now in Iraq. What must I do? He said, all the people who want to get married, don't have dowry, don't have money to settle themselves, give them the zakat money. Gave them the zakat money, came back and said, there is still money left. What must I do? He said, all right, now what you do, everyone who has to pay tax, doesn't have money to pay tax, give them the zakat money. The person wrote back and said, I have given them, there is still zakat money outstanding. This is the barakah that happens when people follow justice. The people of the zakat collector of Africa used to say, people used to come to the Baitul Mal and said, we want to give zakat. They said, we don't want to take your zakat. There is no one poor in this particular region. Subhanallah. And this was a barakah with regard to his khilafat. And that's what happens many a times with regard to people who bring about justice. This is a barakah. I read somewhere previously, this time when I did some research, I could not find this. But it is not uncommon. It is part of justice. And I will conclude with this and then make mention of the last stages of his life. It is made mention that, one day a person of the city dweller was traveling through the desert. So when he came upon a shepherd, and he was sitting with a shepherd, and he noticed that the sheep and the wolf were sort of, drinking water together. And he didn't think about it. He said, this is something surprising, but maybe the wolf is not hungry, whatever it is. And he said, while he was doing this, all of a sudden, the wolf attacked the sheep. And the shepherd said, Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. So this person said, why do you say Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un? That's a natural process. A natural process, wolf attacking the sheep. He said, I'm not saying Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un because of that. I'm saying Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un because Umar bin Abdul Aziz rahmatullahi alayhi has passed away. He said, you are in the desert. What do you know Umar bin Abdul Aziz rahmatullahi alayhi has passed away? He said, Umar's justice had an impact upon animals also. Now that I saw this, I said, Inna lillahi, he has passed away. The person noted the time when he went back to the city. He said exactly that same time, Umar bin Abdul Aziz rahmatullahi alayhi had passed away from this world. Mention is made, he gave remarkable type of advices before he passed away. Time doesn't allow us with regard to it. The Umayyads felt their power and influence was slipping away. Therefore, according to some narrations, they poisoned him. They said, if he's going to rule, what's going to happen? There's going to be no influence, no power, no wealth left for us. Everything is going to be distributed amongst the poor. So therefore, he said that, they poisoned him. And when he was towards the end of his life, he one day told his servant just before he passed away, I always have some ambition. And when I achieve that ambition, I try for something higher. Now I only got one ambition left. And that ambition is to attain Jannah. Then afterwards he called, because of that poison, he was on his deathbed. And mention is made that he kept on smiling while on his deathbed, while reciting the ayat, which are recited at the khutbah. تِلْكَ الدَّارُ الْآخِرَةِ نَجْعَلُهَا لِلَّذِينَ لَا يُرِيدُونَ غُلُوًا فِي الْأَرْضِ وَلَا فَسَادًا. Allah will give Jannah for those people who don't achieve or don't want pomp and splendor in this world and don't want corruption in the earth. And they are the people whom Allah will grant Jannah to. It seems as if he was echoing his entire life when he recited those ayats and he passed away. Mu'abul Hasan Nadwi rahimahullah writes, if Providence would have given him a longer life, then we would have witnessed a complete and lasting revolution, changing the course of human history. Wallahi al-Azim, a remarkable human being. May Allah Ta'ala give us the tawfiq of understanding his greatness. And mention is also made that there is one hadith of Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam that says, after every 100 years, Allah appoints a mujaddid, a reviver of the deen, who revives the deen. And he said, by the very nature, ulama have got different lists. Now, who is the reviver of the 1st century, 2nd century, 3rd century, 4th century? Ulama have got different lists. But everyone is unanimous that the first reviver in the Muslim ummah was Umar bin Abdul Aziz rahmatullah alayhi. He revived deen, and today he still remains a standard, even if sometimes we cannot achieve it in practice. He remains a standard for people who have authority, people who are leaders, for you and I in terms of his taqwa and piety. May Allah give us the tawfiq of understanding and making amal. Wa akhiru da'wana alhamdulillahi rabbil alamin.